Hello and welcome to the ExamRevision Leaving Cert Geography Predictions 2025 video. In this video, we'll be taking you through the geography paper for 2025 and having a look at probable questions, possible questions that could be coming up in this year's paper. Obviously, it's very difficult to actually tell exactly what's going to be coming up on the Leaving Cert paper. However, we can look at trends in recent years and look at what has come up before and have an educated guess in terms of where we should have our focus in terms of your revision over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, the exam is coming up very shortly and time is running out. So we want to be able to study that a little bit smarter. So hopefully this video will give you an idea of where you should put your focus. We'll also have a general look at the paper itself and how you can study that bit smarter. The first place I'd like to start is just by looking at the adjustments for 2025. So like in previous years since COVID, there have been allowances made and adjustments made for the paper. So while before you would have to answer a question from each section, this is not quite the case for 2025. So, for example, the short questions are the same as normal. You're going to have a choice of 12 questions. You have to answer 10 and you'll be marked out of those. I would, of course, suggest that you would answer all 12 short questions in terms of then it gives you a better opportunity to pick up more marks as you will be marked out your best 10 nonetheless. But there is no change in terms of the short questions and there's no adjustments there. The adjustment does come, however, in part 2, the structured essay question section. And where the adjustment has come is, as you can see here in front of us, is candidates must attempt 4 questions. And this must include 1 question from 3 of the sections below. So before COVID, we had a situation where you had to do 4 questions and there was 1 from each of the 4 sections. This time around, you can pick 4 questions from 3 sections. This means that you could leave out a section and complete an extra question from another section. So you might have discussed this in class already with your teacher and you might have decided, well, I'm going to do 2 questions from section 1, patterns and processes in the physical environment, and I'm going to completely leave out regional and then do 1 question for my elective and 1 question for my option. This is completely up to you and it's whatever you feel like. Some people in the past have done 1 question traditionally from section 1, section 2, section 3 and section 4. However, it probably is beneficial for us to cut out a particular section. Whichever section that is, again, as I said, is completely up to you. A lot of people like to cut out maybe the regional section or the elective and even do 2 questions from section 4, your option section. The reason why this might be good for some people is it means that you're cutting down a number of essays that you have to write, as section 4 is the long essay question. It's an 80-mark essay. Obviously a little bit longer than your 30-mark question, but it means that instead of learning 2 separate essays, you can reduce that down to 1. So some people do 2 essays from section 4, maybe leave out section 3 altogether, and then do a question from section 2 and section 1. Again, this is up to yourself. It's whatever way you want to approach this particular exam. But again, I would suggest that you do talk to your teacher, look at what you have covered in class previously, and maybe what are the best areas for you. So what is your strongest section, and focus on that particular section for your 2 questions and cut out a section then completely. The first section on the paper that you're going to come across is going to be the short questions. So in terms of the short questions, what you're going to see is the fact that this in total is going to be worth 80 marks. So you're going to have a situation where you're going to have 12 questions. You get marked out of your best 10. 8 marks each brings this up to 80 marks. This means that this is worth 16% of the entire paper, as the entire paper, including the GI, is worth 500 marks. So it is quite a considerable amount, okay, of the marks. So it's very important that we concentrate on our short questions and we give it the respect that it deserves, as a lot of people rush through the short questions and move on to the longer questions, essay questions, believing they're more important. But in reality, these are worth the same amount as a complete long question. So it's very important that, as I said, we spend time on this. So timing, we recommend that you spend 30 minutes, but no more than this, as you will need to move on to your essay questions and you'll need to give time to that. So anywhere between 25 to 30 minutes would be sufficient to get your short questions done. Make sure that you read all the questions properly, particularly on graphs, as so many students lose out on marks when they do not read the question correctly. This goes for your longer questions as well. So ensure that you're reading it all correctly, that you read it carefully, and again, as I said before, spend the time, okay, reading the question and ensuring that you're answering the question that has been asked. Okay, and again, on graphs and things like that, weather charts, whatever it may be, read the information carefully. Answer all 12 questions. You get marked out of your best 10, so to give yourself the best chance of getting more marks, it's better to answer them all. So then your two worst short questions will be basically not counted, and your best 10 will be. So you're giving yourself a better chance if you answer all 12. The short questions, the focus on these will be from your core units 1, 2 and 3. So these questions will be on physical, they will be on regional. So as we spoke about, you can cut out a particular section. I'd recommend that obviously we do not cut out physical, because physical is so important. It's the basis of a lot of the course. You spent a lot of time with that probably in 5th year, and also comes up a lot in your short questions. So it's important to study over that. Your regional, you'll also have regional questions in here, so important to look over that. And then you're also going to have your different skills, such as your map skills, weather charts, stuff like that. So it's important that you look over those. Remember, when you're putting in an answer and the answer is in units, put in the units after your answer. So if the answer is 10 millimeters, make sure and put in mm after that, because if you don't put in the units afterwards, you will not get the marks for your answer. So if it's millimeters, millibars or centimeters, whatever it may be, make sure that you put in those units with your answer to ensure that you pick up the marks. The final piece of advice we would have for the short questions is practice, practice, practice. Look over the previous year's papers. This is the best way to improve your short questions, because what you will see is the same type of short questions come up again and again each and every year. And if you can master the past paper short questions that have come up, well then you're going to be in a good position for the 2025 paper. So ensure that you're looking over and practicing all the previous exam short questions. The next section you're going to see will be your physical geography section, and this will be questions 1, 2 and 3. Now, the important thing I want to point out for both the physical geography section and the regional geography section, as well as your elective, is the fact that the timings for these are all going to be the same. So for a question, let's just say you pick question 1 for the physical geography, you are going to spend 5 minutes on your A part, you're going to spend 12.5 minutes on your B part, and 12.5 minutes on your C part. The reason for that is because your A part is obviously going to be a shorter question. It's not worth as many marks. So you spend and devote 5 minutes to that. So for example, question 1A is going to be a map question. So you got 5 minutes to get your map done in terms of that. Your B and C parts are going to be essay questions. So we do need to spend a little bit more time on them. So that's going to be 12.5 minutes each. That's going to bring you a total then of 30 minutes. So you're going to be spending half an hour on any of these long questions that you're going to be doing in your physical geography, in your regional geography, or in your elective. So bear that in mind. A thing that I would always recommend to students is that you keep an eye on your time, that you don't overspend time on certain sections, because this is going to take away from other sections. So be watching the clock, ensuring that you're spending appropriate amount of time on each part, okay, and not overspending or underspending time on any particular section. So this basically means per section you're going to spend, or per question even, you're going to be spending 30 minutes. Now, for example, as we spoke about before, If you were to do 2 questions from the physical geography section, that means you've got an hour to do those 2 questions. So just bear that in mind if that is what you're going to basically do on a 2025 paper. All right, but essentially A part, 5 minutes, and your 2 essay, B and C parts, you're going to spend 12.5 minutes on each of them, roundabout. Obviously, it's not maybe going to be exactly on that, but that's the general amount of time that you want to be spending to ensure that you've got time to get all of the different components of the exam completed. In terms of what to expect on the paper for 2025 in terms of the physical geography section, we need to be looking at, first of all, the A parts. So question 1A is always going to be a sketch map of an OS, an Ordnance Survey map. So again, that key map skill that you would have learned going through the course, make sure you're practicing a couple of them, because that's a definite question that's going to come up. There's not too many definites on this paper, but that is one of them. So again, that's going to be worth 20 marks and it's going to be important. We're probably also going to see some sort of maybe earth structure question in one of the A parts, and maybe an earthquake A part as well. Again, worth 20 marks. So might be something to, in terms of going back over those particular sections with the A part in mind, okay, those shorter questions. Also, maybe look back over your previous exam papers and have a look at those, which you can do obviously on ExamRevision.ie, and have a look at those particular past questions that have had earth structure A parts and earthquake A parts as well in the physical section. Other questions to kind of look at, and probably another definite nearly that we could say, is you're going to have a depositional landform question this year. So every second year it goes between erosional landform and depositional landform. So last year you had your erosional landform, this year it's going to be your depositional landform. So that means you're going to be, depending on what you've studied in class, whether you did rivers, whether you did coasts, or maybe glaciers, you have to look at a depositional and explain a depositional landform. So that's the essay question that's definitely going to come up in 2025. So for example, if you study rivers, you're maybe going to be looking at deltas or levees. So they're the type of question, or that's the essay that you need to be studying and revising. It's definitely going to be there in 2025. If you're studying coasts or glaciers, you look over your depositional landforms for them. So it's crucially important that you do look over that. So you will not have an erosion landform essay question this year in all likelihood. However, again, short questions and stuff like that, it is important that you do have knowledge of them because they could come up in the short questions. In terms of the formation of rocks, I've put metamorphic rocks here. This is just looking at previous exam papers. We've seen that in recent years we've had a good bit in terms of igneous and sedimentary rocks. So we put metamorphic here, has a high chance coming up in 2025. That's not to say that igneous or sedimentary won't come up this year. So do bear that in mind, don't neglect them, right? Do be looking over them, and again, for your short questions, they could be important, but it's just that there is a high likelihood that metamorphic could come up. Again, bear in mind that oftentimes in the physical questions, they do a combination sometimes, so they might have a combination of sedimentary and metamorphic rocks or igneous and metamorphic rocks. So just bear that in mind. So don't neglect the other 2 categories of rocks, but metamorphic has a really strong chance this year. Human interaction with the rock cycle, again, could be due to come up, hasn't come up in the last year or 2, so we want to be looking over that and have a revise over it. Chemical weathering and karst landscapes, again, has a really strong chance of coming up this year, and it would be something that I would suggest that you would revise over and look into. Our constructive plate boundaries would be a very good chance coming up this year, as destructive plate boundaries came up last year. So again, high chance for constructive plate boundaries. I'd be looking over that. Look over your notes, and again, notes available on ExamRevision.ie. Full complement for all these different topics that we're looking at here. And then your isostatic processes, again, didn't come up last year, so a high chance of coming up this year in a long question. So your base level, you want to be looking over them if you can at all, because again, like those other topics that have got listed here, there's a high chance, high probability of them coming up based on the different trends that have happened in previous years and what came up last year as well. So they're the topics that I'd recommend that you would definitely study and revise over. Of course, there are other topics that you need to be aware aware of, your earthquakes, your volcanoes, plate tectonics, fold mountains, things like that. So don't neglect them either. Ensure that you are looking over them and you are aware of the different topics that can also come up. And just while you're here viewing this video, it would be very helpful for you to know that, of course, a huge amount of notes and presentations to help you on ExamRevision.ie with all your studies in terms of Leaving Cert Geography. It's all there for you. It's got hundreds of bite-sized video tutorials as well that makes learning easier, of course, for students. You can use 2025 tips for 10% off a package of your choice. Obviously, we're looking at geography here, so you can use that to get the geography, or to get 10% off the geography package. With this package, of course, you're going to get on-demand video tutorial grinds 24/7 with the entire subject. You're going to get those video tutorial grinds, as I told you about, PowerPoint presentations, H1 distinction notes, which are going to be very helpful for that physical geography we just looked at. All the marking schemes for the previous exam papers. You're going to get quizzes, you're going to get a reflection log, and smart adaptive technology to guide your learning. So it's going to be very beneficial if you do sign up, especially with the last few weeks coming in before the Leaving Cert itself. It's not just geography you can get. They've got 21 Leaving Cert subjects fully completed, all other subjects with exam papers and marking schemes. So you've got your Irish, your English, your maths, biology, chemistry, whatever you need, it's completely there for you. So not just geography, many other subjects, they're available for you as well. You can get a complete revision package walkthrough there. Just log on to ExamRevision.ie. You can see how it works. Have a look yourselves. Again, use 25 tips for that 10% off package. Will be very beneficial for you. You can go online and see some of our student reviews, like you can see here. So this platform has helped so many different students over the years, and it's proven by the fantastic reviews we've got online. So you can look at any of them and see the brilliant reviews and how it's helped them so much, and it has been absolutely fantastic. So again, 2025 tips, avail of your package today, 10% off. It'll be well worth it. Now, back to our Leaving Cert Geography exam. So, we're now moving on to our regional geography section. Some of you might choose to leave this section out, others not. Just bear in mind that this will also have some short questions, so from that point of view it could be important to look back over in any case. Okay, so just in terms of what we need to be looking out for in terms of our regional geography, again I caveat everything I'm saying here in terms of it can be hard to predict exactly what's going to come up, but again these are kind of educated guesses in terms of what you can be looking for and watching out for. So in terms of the A parts, sketch maps. So you're going to be asked to do a sketch map of a region. So if you look back on the previous exam papers, you'll see that they ask you to do a little bit of a sketch and a key of an area of their choosing. So in the past, obviously you can get Ireland, you could get a European region, or you can get a subcontinental region, whichever one you're studying. So when it comes to sketch maps for this year, it's a high chance that Ireland, okay, an Irish region could be asked. And there's a high chance that it could also be a European region. For European region, I just have the Paris Basin written there. Obviously, it could be the Mezzogiorno either, but the Paris Basin does tend to be easier to sketch. So that's why the Paris Basin region is basically in there. So bear that in mind. You want to be practicing those sketch maps. And that is going to be a definite question. It's going to be 100% there, the first regional geography question. So that is something you want to be preparing for and getting ready in terms of that. Also, table interpretation question does come up also, so be ready for that. Again, look over previous exam papers on examrevision.ie and practice them would be good advice. In terms of your Irish regions, again, looking at previous years, what has come up and what hasn't, I'd be looking back over your primary economic activities for Ireland. Again, sometimes you're asked to compare two contrasting Irish regions with that. So I'd be looking over both the GDA and the West of Ireland. You've got your tertiary economic activities. could potentially come up this year. I'd be looking over your GDA for that one. And then there might be something in terms of population dynamics. So just bear in mind that it could be something to do with maybe population distribution in a region within Ireland. So have a look back over your notes on that on ExamRevision.ie. Also, for the Paris Basin region, European region, I would be focusing on the Paris Basin region rather than the Mezzi Journal. There's just a lot more to talk about and it reduces the amount of study that you've got to do. So focus on the Paris Basin region for me. For that particular region, I'd be looking at tertiary economic activities again, high chance coming up this year. Also, secondary economic activities has a chance to come up, and I wouldn't rule out an urban area. So looking at the Paris as your urban area and how that has developed. And again, you can bring in your primary, secondary, and tertiary economic activities into that question, into your answer for an urban area. In terms of your subcontinental region, I've got Brazil there because that's what I would be doing with my class, is the Brazil region, but you might be doing a different one. That's fair enough. But the questions that could be coming up for the subcontinental region might be primary and secondary. I would be looking over those particular two areas, and also maybe they might want you to look at population distribution within the subcontinental region. So bear that in mind. Another question that has a high chance coming up this year is looking at a region of culture. And looking at culture in a region. So again, look over whatever region you've studied with regards to culture. So if you looked at the Gaeltacht, if you looked at Belgium, okay, whatever notes you have got or have done in class. And again, there's loads of notes and resources on this on the ExamRevision site. So I'd be looking at that question, looking at that sample answer. Again, we've got H1 sample answers for all of these sections on ExamRevision.ie. But I will also be looking at that because it hasn't come up in the last 2 years. So there's a good chance that it could come up this year as well. So bear that in mind and bear those questions in mind, those type of questions in mind when you're going to be doing your revision. Because again, there's a likelihood that they could appear in the paper. In terms of your electives, if you're choosing to do an elective, again, you could leave out an elective and do an extra question from another section. But if you are choosing to do your economic elective, here are some of the possible sections that you want to be maybe looking at. So the OS map question, this is an OS 30-mark question essay that comes up every single year. Look over the previous exam papers and practice a few of those questions. Again, if you're doing an economic elective, it'd be really key to do that because this comes up every single year. In terms of something that also comes up every single year almost, is you're drawing an OS map or an aerial photograph. Okay, so sketching of an OS map, 20 mark every single year. So again, be practicing that and looking over the previous exam questions on ExamRevision.ie. You've also got multinational companies, multinational corporation questions come up every year nearly, or very, very often with the economic elective. So be looking over that. Have a look at your footloose industry. Your environmental impacts of economic activity, and also conflict due to exploitation of natural resources would be key areas that would be suggested that you would look over. Obviously, there are other areas as well for your economic section, so bear that in mind, but have these at the forefront of your mind when you're going into your revision. If it's the human geography elective that you're doing, well then again, you want to be looking at your sketch map of an aerial photograph. This comes up every single year in this particular part of the geography exam. So human geography will always have a sketch map of an aerial photograph. So be practicing them, and again, bear in mind that sketching an aerial photograph is different to sketching an OS map. So practice those, look back over your notes on that, and ensure you're ready for that particular question. Also, things to be looking over, things to be revising over and looking at previous exam questions would be urban planning theories and strategies. Looking at your population change in Ireland would be another topic to look at. Central place theory so often comes up. Urban problems, and then also migration would be an area that you should be focusing on. The final section then to look at is your geoecology section. We're going to focus here on this particular area of biomes and soils. And again, in this section, generally what happens is you're going to get 2 soils questions and you're going to get a question on biomes. So with regards to soils, which I have here in a different color, I have it in the black color here, in comparison to the biomes, what you should really be focusing on is the characteristics of soils. That has a really high chance of coming up this year, or the characteristics of any one soil that you have studied. So choose those kind of two areas essentially to look over when it comes to your soil revision. Okay, so again, there is definitely going to be a soil question to essentially look at. The other question that is going to come up in your geoecology section is going to be a biome question. If you look at the previous years that things have come up, the last time adaptations specifically came up was 2015, human interaction last time was 2023, and then characteristics of a biome is 2024. If you know your characteristics of a biome, that's going to have you set anyway for your adaptations question. It's just about adapting your question or your answer basically to the adaptations part. So really looking over your characteristics of biome would be something I would suggest you do in case that adaptations question came up. However, for 2025, it's highly likely that we're going to see human interaction with a biome, so I would be revising over that particular essay. Bear in mind that these essays for your geoecology section is going to be marked differently. It is an 80-mark essay when you take into account that you're going to have OC marks, or overall coherence marks, which are going to be worth 20 marks, and you're going to have your different sections that you're going to divide your essay up into. So bear that in mind. Look over sample answers that you can find on ExamRevision.ie would also be extremely helpful. So I would be picking out characteristics of soil. Definitely look over that question, and also your human interaction with biome as two very big ones to be looking over with this particular section. And again, you're going to see two soil questions. So this characteristic of soil has a really high chance of coming up. Also have a little look over your characteristics of a biome, and then focusing on your human interaction with a biome has a high chance of coming up in this year. Bear in mind and practice the structure of this particular essay. As I said before, it is different to your 30-mark essays. So ensure that you're practicing that in your revision. And again, ExamRevision.ie has H1 examples of all of those essays. So that's going to bring an end to our look at the 2025 paper, looking at probable questions that potentially are going to come up this year. I hope you found this useful. Again, if you want to avail of our offer of 2025 tips, you can get 10% off an exam revision package, which would be very valuable for you as you get ready for your Leaving Cert exams. And I wish you the very best of luck in your endeavours. I hope that everything goes well for you, and I hope that these hints and tips will be of great benefit for you as you go towards studying for these Leaving Cert exams. So thanks for listening, and the very best of luck.